1. Okay, so this will probably, hopefully, be my first and last post, as I'm a non-believer. Or was. This story goes back as long as I can remember, all back to my childhood, and I can't say for sure when exactly it started. My bedroom used to be on the first floor, just next to the front door. Next to the front door we had 2 large windows going all the way to the floor on both sides, and I had a normal window in my room facing in the same direction. In front of my window I had some very sheer curtains in white, and next to the front door there were no curtains. My bed was situated across from my door, with my bed facing away from the window. My pillow would approximately be 1 meter from the window. Anyway, what would sometimes happen was that I could hear footsteps, clear and loud footsteps coming from one side of the front towards my window. Then the sound would abruptly stop. Sometimes I could also see the shape of a rather tall and big-built man outside my window. It was hard to say exactly how big, but from the shape, I would say taller than a normal man, but with the same build. As a child, I used to compare the shape with Jaws from James Bond, as he had a similar shape and was very tall. Now, this sometimes happened, and my brother had his room across from me. But he barely slept there, and he was scared of the dark. Eventually, my dad moved there when he was snoring. My brother hasn't heard anything that he can remember, but he also moved upstairs before he hit his teens. This happened frequently, and several nights I would lay still for at least an hour or so, unable to move, as I was completely paralyzed with fright. Thinking if I just lay still, the thing outside my window will either think my bed is empty, or that I am sleeping, or just go away. Eventually I started to doubt myself and what I was seeing myself, as I had been told so many times it was probably just my imagination. I opted to try and catch it in the act, and I tried to put something in front of the window in advance, and then peek out in the hallway to see if I could see something walking past. But nothing. I also tried to use my web camera to record through the whole night, but never caught anything interesting. I tried to tell my parents, but they kept telling me it was my imagination, and that I either was having a bad dream, or that my imagination was just taking it too far. Now, in their defense, I have a pretty vivid imagination, and I've been scared of lots of things that don't exist before. But I have never, before or after, heard or seen anything except for this walking man. And then there was this one night. I was sitting up and chatting with online friends, and the time was about 3 a.m. I remember the time because I freaked out about it being 3 a.m. after watching The Exorcist for the first time. When there was someone trying to open the front door. 3 times they pushed down the handle and I almost peed myself. I remember telling the group I was chatting with, thinking in case I die or something, police will find out what happened. Weird what you think about when you're scared. After waiting for a bit, I ran over to the opposite room and I woke my dad, who I was so happy was in that room that night. He didn't believe me and said I had been having a bad dream, but I had been completely awake and didn't even feel a bit sleepy. But after a bit, he agreed to come with me, and he brought a flashlight to see out the windows. Nothing, nowhere. Then I moved away, and when I got back to visit my parents, I was wondering if I could still hear the steps, but I didn't. They had stopped. But I could never completely relax in that bed. Should maybe also add that when it was winter and snowy outside, I didn't just hear the footsteps, but the snow against shoe sounds also, which just made it more real. But the next day, there wouldn't necessarily be any additional shoe prints. We did not live in a city or something. I could walk into dense forest after walking about 30 steps. Now, a friend I told this to said it might be a ghost or something, possibly looking after me. And at that time I started to believe that story because a ghost, even if it was scary, was less scary than the alternatives. Now I am not really sure what to believe. Was it a ghost? Was it a person? Or was I hallucinating or something for over 15 years? 2. I moved into the house when I was 5 years old with my parents. We had it upstairs with 2 bedrooms and shared a bathroom that was connected to both rooms. I'm going to call my room the pink room and the other room the blue room. I am an only child, so the blue room was just a guest bedroom. I never actually saw anything, but I did have plenty of creepy experiences. The guest bedroom and bath always made plenty of noises, which were not the house settling and whatnot. I had random things in my room and closet collapse in the middle of the night. I saw lots of shadow people there. Doors would randomly open. I had all sorts of random experiences that would happen once or twice and never again. The ceiling that was technically my bedroom floor was always messed up. One time, while in a bath, I heard someone walking and breathing to the right and above me. I would have random noises wake me up. Footsteps would come up the stairs, but there was no one there. One time my friend and I were talking on my bed, and I had a water bottle on my desk, and we both watched it fly off my desk. My dog, which, if you don't know, dogs can see paranormal things, would stare behind me and never at me when I was near the stairs. I ended up getting a new dog that I would try to bring to my room, but that dog would be on my bed, and then hear a sound come from the blue room, then it would proceed to freak out and bark outside of the room, but it would never go in it. It went in once, then proceeded to run out and go down the stairs. The clocks in that house never worked. They would die or be set to the wrong time always. We had a clock that, when you turned it on, it was set to the time zone. That's my understanding of it, at least. It would always be set to the wrong time. Other clocks would just die. My mother got an alarm clock, brand new, and put it in the guest bedroom. After a month or so, it started going off at 9:30 at night, even though no one ever set an alarm on it. I would end up unplugging it, but someone or something would plug it back in, and the alarm clock would consistently go off later in the night. We had a corner in our living room that attracted many spiders and dead bugs. It wouldn't matter how much you cleaned it, within a few days it would be back to its nastiness. Well, come to find out years later, when I just moved into the house, I told my stepdad about how creeped out the corner made me, and how there was something wrong with it. My stepsisters also had this feeling, and have said something about it multiple times as children. My stepsister had also mentioned to me that her clocks never worked, and that she had bad haunting feelings living there as well. I have never lived with my stepsisters, nor had talked with them about the house, so I came up with it solo. I had also seen what looked like a person sitting there multiple times at night while living at that house, but it could have been my imagination. As a kid, I also felt as if someone was living in the house with me besides my parents. However, I do suffer from extreme anxiety, so who knows? When I first moved into that house, I had looked outside in our dumpster, and had seen multiple photos of an old woman which I had assumed were from the previous owner. However, the previous owner was my stepdad before he and my mom moved in, so it would be impossible for it to be the owners before that, but I do still remember seeing them. Well, that old woman would be the nanny. The owners before my stepdad had lived with an old woman. The old woman had her own room, which was the blue room. She ended up dying while living in the house. I do not know if she was in the room or at a hospital. My parents think she was in the room. We have since moved out and left the house for a new owner. Have fun. 3. All my life, I'm 20 and female now, I've had paranormal experiences, in every stage of my life and every home I've lived in. When I was a baby, my mum was taking a nap whilst I slept in my cot. She was half asleep when she saw a man walk into the room, take his cap off, and place it on the nightstand. Thinking it was my dad, she asked, "You're home from work early?" He never replied. When she opened her eyes, no one was there, and no cap was sat on the nightstand. When I was around 5 or 6 years old, I walked downstairs early in the morning, before anyone was awake, to get myself something to drink. Our old kitchen was a horrible orange color with these horrible sheer orange curtains that you could see through. When I walked into the kitchen, I saw a man, or a boy, sat on the windowsill, knees up to his chest. I could see him through the curtains, but not clear enough to see much detail. I remember running back up the stairs as fast as I could, jumping on top of my sleeping sister. My mom and sister always reminded me of that story, and are shocked when I tell them I remember it vividly. My sister reported that she used to hear one of the dining room table chairs scraping along the floor most nights, when we were all upstairs in bed. When I was around 8, we moved to a new house. Few things happened to me there. The bathroom tap was one of those old generic taps that you have to twist to turn on. One day, I remember suddenly realizing that I could hear gushing water coming from the bathroom next to my bedroom. When I investigated, I found the bathroom tap twisted all the way on, to the point where it took me a good 20 seconds to turn it off completely. I didn't see anyone go into that bathroom. I also had a reoccurring nightmare when I lived in that house, which I would dream about once every month or so. I only found this out recently, but my mother and sister both reported seeing a dark shadow moving across the wall in the upstairs hallway towards my bedroom, and disappearing once it reached my open doorway. They reported seeing this separately on multiple occasions. One night in that house, when I was around 10 years old, I'd come back from a bike ride with my father around autumn time. A car had drove through a puddle and absolutely soaked the both of us. My dad went into the kitchen to make himself a cup of coffee, whilst I sat on the sofa to watch TV. I suddenly felt a chunk of my wet hair drop onto my shoulder, as if it had been picked up in the air. When I looked at it, I saw the chunk was slowly unraveling, as if it had been picked up and twisted around someone's finger. Months later, I told my mum the story, to which she freaked out and told me how her father, who had died of cancer around a month before the incident, used to sneak up behind her and twist her hair as a child to make her jump. We moved to my current home when I was around 12. A lot of stuff went on in that house, and I always felt a heavy presence. We had laminated flooring in our living room, and one night, whilst my parents were out shopping, I heard something being dragged slowly across the floor. I figured it must have been my cat pawing at a plug that was laying on the floor. We had a floor lamp which was almost always unplugged. I thought this up until my parents came home. When my mother opened the door, I heard her say, "Come on then, in you come." She was speaking to my cat, who had been waiting outside the entire time they were out. I've had my feet scratched whilst I've been trying to sleep. I've heard loud, heavy footsteps walk through the kitchen in the middle of the day, thinking my dad had come home from work early. I've heard my mother call my name, cough or sigh when she has not been home. I've seen black shapes moving towards me from the corner of my eye. I'm not sure if these incidents are unrelated or if I'm being followed by something specific. My mom is a believer in the practice of Wicca and paganism, and she decided to practice smudging and saging, the burning of a stick of sage to cleanse negative energy and invite positive energy. I wouldn't class myself as a hardcore Wiccan or pagan, but I definitely believe the practices to an extent. Ever since my mother saged the house, the experiences have stopped, and I no longer feel a dark presence. I still have the odd experience every now and again, but I no longer feel haunted. I hope whatever may have been connected to me is gone for good. 4. So, I guess it started to begin sometime back in June, right before graduation. As most people are, I was happily awaiting the day I'd finally be out of school. I was eager and excited. but I guess something sensed that and latched onto me. It was a week before graduation when I started to feel an extremely negative energy coming directly from a specific corner of my closet. My closet is one of those types where it's two white folding doors that you slide open. I was just out watching YouTube that night, when it just felt kinda like I was being watched. It didn't take long for me to realize where this feeling was coming from, the corner of my closet with a vent. Now, I'm no idiot. I know we sometimes feel like we're being watched even though nothing's there, but this felt absolutely different. You know the scenes in that film Insidious where Dalton falls off the ladder in the dark attic and stares at the furnace? Or the scene where Elsie is staring at the corner of the ceiling at the demon and no one else can see it? That's what it felt like. It wasn't just that occasional feeling of I'm being watched. It was the feeling of if I look away, something's gonna pounce from that corner and eat me alive. The presence felt threatening. So I took some sage and smudged my room. But even then, I didn't feel safe enough to sleep until the sun rose. But I had an even worse experience the next day. I typically kept my closet open because it made me feel more comfortable. But that changed after this. It was around 2 p.m. when I was just watching a movie our teacher had on in Zoom, when I sensed movement out of the corner of my eye. I looked over and saw what looked like a woman crawling along the top shelf of my closet. This apparition only lasted for a split second, but it scared the living shit out of me. It wasn't like how they say in these types of stories. She wasn't transparent, she wasn't a shadow. She looked like a real living and breathing person crawling at an impossible speed. But despite the fact that it felt like my soul left and was halfway to hell already after seeing that, I'm willing to admit that it could have just been my exhaustion from school and 1 hour's sleep. But ever since graduation, it felt like something is watching me at night. I can feel its eyes on me as I sleep, and like always, it's never just the feeling of being watched. It always feels directly threatening. Not a night has gone by once, then, in my room, where I don't feel like someone or something is standing right above me as I sleep, watching me, threatening me. For the longest time, that's all it was. But I kept feeling like I was going insane, but I know I'm not. I sleep alone at my mom's house, and I'm perfectly fine. I feel alone. But it started to get worse when it felt like something started to touch me when I tried to sleep. It starts with the feeling of being gazed upon like prey. Then, as I start to ignore it, it feels like hands slowly gliding down my blanket. The first time it happened, I jumped out of bed thinking someone broke in, only to find my room completely empty. Then it started vocalizing, I think. The first time I heard it was back in August, when it sounded like an older man sighed at the foot of my bed. I didn't dare go back to sleep. The second time, it sounded like a woman gasping. And the third time, it sounded like an old man imitated my puppy's yip right in my ear. I also feel like I hear rummaging in my room at night. Occasionally, it sounds like a bag is being moved or something. I've dreaded going to sleep every night, so I started bringing my dog Bugsy to bed with me, and it seemed to make activity disappear for about a week. I distinctly remember cuddling up to Bugsy one night, but I couldn't fall asleep, because I felt Bugsy pitter-patter on the foot of my bed. It started imitating my dog. That was its new thing for a while, the feeling of dog feet walking around my legs. Then I would start hearing Bugsy bark in rooms he wasn't in. Same for my dog Shadow. And it was around this time when Shadow died in his sleep from a random heart attack, completely out of nowhere. And I'm terrified that it was a direct threat to me, killing my precious angel for no reason but to threaten me. and it started to threaten Bugsy. Every night, starting after Shadow's death in October, he'd growl at the closet. This happened for about 2 weeks until it evolved into Bugsy full-on snarling at the closet like it was taunting him. The most recent activity was tonight. That's why I'm writing this post. I felt eyes, the threatening presence, but I tried to ignore it this night. And it wasn't receptive to the idea. Electricity, it felt like static, was running down my back and up my neck all night. I need help. I need to know what this is and how to get rid of it. Or I fear what it did to my dog, it'll do to Bugsy and me. Five. Okay, so let me start off with saying when this happened, I didn't believe in any paranormal stuff or activity. This occurred in the middle of September 2014, when I was 10 years old, just the beginning of 5th grade. When I was a kid, I would go to my neighbor's house to go jump on their trampoline in the backyard. I jumped on it so much that I didn't have to ask anymore because I was there 4 times a week, every week, for 2 years. One Saturday night, my friend and I, Jay, decided to go jump on the trampoline at about 5:30 p.m. We crossed the street, walked across the road, went down their hilly backyard, and then got on it. Jay and I were jumping, doing tricks for a little bit, having fun. It felt uneasy and uncomfortable the whole time. Something just felt off. At about 5:45-ish to 6 p.m., the sun was just starting to set. The sun was tapping the horizon, looking actually very pretty, but we were in the shadows of the house. Jay was having fun, but then mid-jump froze, his face white as a ghost. He slowly and shakily pointed his finger towards the dense trees and said scaredly, "Key Gaming 99. What the hell is that?" I'm already crapping myself, but slowly turn around. In the distance, about 150 yards away, in the shade of the trees, was this probably around 9-foot super skinny bony thing that was white with a grey tinge to it. Its head was oval-shaped, like a football, had long finger claws, 6 to 7-inch fangs in its mouth, and bright white piercing eyes. It was half hidden behind a tree, with its hand around it, just staring at us angrily. Jay and I just stared at it horrified and in disbelief for probably 10 seconds, but it felt like 10 minutes. It was like we were in a trance and couldn't move, either out of fear or because of it. This thing looked like it was going to run at us. I could just feel it. I told Jay that we had to leave now or we would die. With all my strength, I forced my little 10-year-old body to move, and Jay was just ahead of me. We jumped off the trampoline and started running, but Jay tripped, and I wasn't going to stop. As I was sprinting up the hill, I looked over my shoulder to see if Jay got up, and I swear, this thing was coming. So I ran even faster than I have ever run before, back to my house. Jay entering right after me, scared to death. We never went back there. I lived there for another 2 years, and never talked about it again. I told my parents about it, but they didn't believe me, which is understandable, because who's going to believe their 10-year-old about something like that? I haven't told anyone this story except my girlfriend, because I literally blocked it out of my head, even when all the haunting stuff happened, until I was reading Reddit and remembered it a day or 2 ago. Ever since that day, when I'm alone in the dark, not at home, I get this overwhelming feeling of being watched. Also, it kind of looks like Slenderman and a Skinwalker combined. Mr. Ballin on YouTube has a thumbnail that kind of looks like it, so if you look up the most believable alien encounter, the Skinwalker Wrench story on YouTube, and look at his thumbnail, imagine that and Slenderman combined. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 259. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then, Well, no, we're not doing that. What we're going to do is we're going to take the video and we're going to share it about, aren't we? So go on all the social medias and throw it at your followers and go, watch this good. And then everyone will be happy. See, the bit of an issue to explain how the YouTube algorithm works is if you put a video up that doesn't do as well, then the next video you upload doesn't get promoted as much. So you're kind of you're relying on the people who would watch anyway, which I love you very much. I do. Thanks to you, the channel keeps going. But then that doesn't help attract new people, so they're not recommending it. So we got to push it out there to fight the algorithm, at least until they change it again. Anyway, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.